Now, I can't believe I'm about to say this in October of 2023, but today's video involves Trisha Paytas. Now, I'm not saying that as a bit of a dig to say, like, Trisha's, like, irrelevant or anything now, right? It's just because if you aren't already aware and you maybe are new here, I used to talk about Trisha a fair bit. I mean, obviously, I talk about YouTube and TikTok drama and whatnot, and Trisha Paytas would be in a lot of YouTube drama a few years ago, and it kind of became a bit of a running joke on this channel, like, oh god, what has Trisha done now? But, I mean, I looked at my channel recently, and my most recent video on Trisha Paytas was in January of 2022. So unless I'm just a bit oblivious to it all, I think that Trisha's kind of stayed out of drama for nearly 2 years now, and to be fair, she's still not really in drama. The situation doesn't really involve her directly, she just so happened to be on the podcast we're talking about today. But if she really has stayed out of drama for the past 2 years, I just want to say big congratulations to Trisha, who is definitely not watching this. But let's get into the actual topic, shall we? Because today's situation more specifically focuses on Jeff Wittek and David Dobrik, a situation we spoke about quite a lot as it was going on. If you aren't aware of what happened, then I'll give you a very quick recap. So I'm assuming you know who David Dobrik and Jeff Wittek are. David Dobrik was probably the biggest YouTuber on the platform at the time in terms of the person who was being spoke about the most. This is when obviously his reputation was very good. Jeff Wittek was in the vlog squad, which is their like crew that they would film with. And eventually it all came crashing down for David for many different reasons, but the reason we're specifically talking about today is the crane incident. So David Dobrik was recording a video where he had an excavator. Oh, I always struggle with that word, man. Excavator. Okay, right. I'm going to try and pronounce that correctly for the rest of this video. Probably not going to go very well. So David's filming a video. He has an excavator and a rope attached to it, and he's swinging it around, and people are getting swung by the rope, which just sounds like it could only end in disaster, doesn't it? He initially starts off with Corinna going around in it. She's screaming, saying he's going far too quick, and she wants to get put down. She's obviously terrified for good reason. And then the next person to get on is Jeff, and obviously David just had someone screaming on it, telling him to slow down, so you would think he would do this a bit slower, a bit more safe, right? It's also worth noting that David is controlling the excavator, you know, not exactly a professional when it comes to that type of stuff. But regardless of the warnings from the previous attempt, David decides to go way quicker, and Jeff is getting swung by this rope a lot quicker, a lot higher, and then David kind of just suddenly stops the excavator. Jeff kind of swings and smashes his face on the steel frame. This actually resulted in Jeff having a lot of damage to his eye. I believe at one point he thought that he might actually lose his eye, but after multiple surgeries that I think he is still dealing with to this day in terms of like the procedures, he didn't lose his eye, but I still hear clips from him even recently talking about how his vision is completely messed up in that eye. Now, we didn't actually hear about this incident for a long time after it happened, but when we eventually started hearing about it, Jeff made a documentary that kind of showcased what happened, and David does not come across well in it at all. Basically, after the situation happened, David seems a lot more concerned about his reputation and making sure that people think it's not his fault. There was even one instance where David was on the phone to one of the Kardashians, and he's kind of like putting the camera on Jeff, kind of laughing about it. And yeah, like I mentioned before, this is one of the many reasons why David's career kind of plummeted after this situation. But I hadn't actually heard about this situation for a good year or so, but Jeff Wittek has actually just recently uploaded a podcast with Tana Mongeau and Trisha Paytas where they talk about the whole vlog squad and whatnot, because obviously Trisha used to be in the vlog squad too, and some of the details mentioned in this podcast are shocking. Even when we have such low standards of David Dobrik and his crew in the first place, they're still unbelievably shocking.
He didn't even have your back like privately?
Nah, he didn't want me to make the documentary. He was like, that's gonna make David look bad.
But David was a part of it.
Well, I let him edit it. And literally he had me change lines in it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're only getting started here, but already this is bad, isn't it? The fact that not only David, but the whole kind of squad, if you want to call it that, seemed very concerned about David's image, which I guess makes sense in a way, because if David Dobrik's image is bad, then everyone's image is bad. That's the reason they're even, like, known in the first place. But also, one of your friends who's also in the squad nearly got his eyeball removed, and even now is still dealing with the consequence of that. He's had numerous amount of surgeries, and his vision still isn't great. He even mentions in his podcast at times that, like, if he blows his nose, like, the eyeball feels like it's gonna, like, pop out and stuff like that. Like, it must be so traumatic. But it seems like most of this group only cared about David's reputation at this point. But also, as you just mentioned, David tried to change a bunch of lines in the documentary to sugarcoat it a bit so it wouldn't seem like it's his fault. Which is mad because, in my opinion, when you watch the documentary, David Dobrik comes across really bad. And that's the sugar-coated version.
You know, all my people around me that are not like creators and like influencers, whatever, they're just watching this shit happen. So they were like, yo, this is crazy. I just got out of surgery. My eye's bleeding, stitched up, and they're coming over to edit. And they're like, I was asleep, and they're like calling my crew. And they're like, so what's going on? Like,
yeah, so we're getting these text messages now. And let me just tell you, when I saw these text messages, I couldn't believe what I was reading. So these are messages between Natalie, who was David Dobrik's assistant, or was assistant back then, also kind of like one of his friends as well. She was in the squad, I guess. But this is a person who also kind of relies on David to have her notoriety, right? The reason why she's known is because of David too. And I'm not even trying to say that as a dig. It's just kind of the truth. The whole squad, or most of their squad's kind of in the same position. But Natalie here is messaging Jeff's team, who were editing the documentary. And instead of really like checking up on Jeff, she kind of pretends that she's checking up, but clearly through these text messages, she's only caring about what this documentary is saying and how David is portrayed. Hi, I just saw Jeff's tweet. Don't want to bother him, but how did the edit turn out? Good, we cut out the screenshots and changed some verbiage. He's in bad shape today. Okay, cool. Fucking hell. He's in bad shape today. Yeah, that sounds good. So straight away, we've seen that they've had to change some of the screenshots and change some of the verbiage to try and make David seem better. But then they also added the detail that Jeff's in bad shape. I mean, yeah, he nearly had his eyeball fucking removed. He's having countless amounts of surgery. His eyes all stitched up and bleeding and whatnot. And this next message has nothing to do with how Jeff is doing. She doesn't even pretend to care, you know? She doesn't even start with the message by saying, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, which would obviously just be pretending, but it's at least better than saying nothing. Okay, cool. Did you guys add the teaser stuff for the positive note at the end? Fuck off, man. It's just been said that Jeff is in a bad way because he had an accident with a fucking excavator that nearly destroyed his eye, and all you care about is, oh, did you add some, like, positive stuff at the end? Honestly, the most selfish way this conversation could have went. So we also have some text messages from 2 days ago. The person didn't reply to Natalie here. I mean, for good reason. I wouldn't reply to that either. But 2 days ago, Natalie messages and says, hi, talked to Jeff yesterday and don't want to bother him or really annoy anyone too much, but can't help checking in. How's everything looking for him and the next ep? Okay, so at least here she's pretending to care, right? She's saying, oh, so how's everything looking for him? Oh, and also the next ep. Does David seem like an angel yet? So then someone from Jeff's team replies saying, good, gonna try and have it done and posted by tomorrow. She says, okay, dope. Don't want to stress anyone out, but would love to see it. Any chance we can come by? It's not ready. Tomorrow morning will be better or later, maybe later tonight. And then we actually have this clip of Jeff, Natalie, and David watching the documentary before it was released, where they have to kind of go through the edits.
And I said, just don't jump without me. I don't want this accident to turn me into a pussy, so make sure you don't jump without me.
Honestly, I would love to see like a full video of just seeing how that conversation went, because, I mean, if I had to guess, and yet again, this is not based on any facts at all, I'm just guessing here, I really wouldn't be surprised if during this whole watch party, David and Natalie were just saying, change this, change this, change this, and not anything along the lines of, oh my god, I'm so sorry I put you through that.
I had to like get up and go sit in the chair, and I'm just sitting there with my eye bleeding, and there David and Natalie are at the computer, and it's just like, fucking, yo.
What?
Yeah, and
that's like
so
scary.
So I had some people around that were like, this is so bad. I don't know how Jeff doesn't see it as that it's this bad right now. So he took videos of it, and there's just like these creepy videos of us sitting next to each other editing it.
Did you put that was not in the documentary?
Nah, I might recut the doc.
I mean, I personally would love to see a recut of the documentary, because I want to see it without the whole sugarcoat. And obviously Jeff and David were still kind of friends at this point, so he had to change it a little bit to make David look better, I guess. But now they're obviously not friends, and there's a whole lawsuit going on, and I think Jeff would be a lot more honest. But I guess the problem with doing that is there is a lawsuit going on, like I just mentioned. How much can you actually say? I don't really know how that would work legally. Now, also in this podcast, they do a bit of a tier list of all like the Vlog Squad members and kind of rank them in their opinion of like what they're like as a person. And there's a few interesting points in it. I was quite surprised at how many people got ranked highly. There were a few in the Vlog Squad that it doesn't seem like Trisha or Jeff had too much of a problem with. But there were certain people that they definitely did have a problem with. And Natalie seems to be one of the biggest people in that.
Oh, down there where she could go.
She's below David.
Back in prison with David. That's where she's gonna end up.
She's down. The stuff about her is insane, like insane. Like people are always like, "Why do you hate Natalie?" I'm like, "Oh my god, her stuff is with me too." Stuff I found out after, I was like, "Oh my god."
She's not a real person. When I voiced my opinion on, I think it was fucked up that a girl was assaulted by this scumbag.
Yeah.
I think that was wrong, and I think it's fucked up that I didn't know that. She calls me, oh, David's not going to like that.
That is actually mental. Like, I know David's paying the bills and everything, right? But fucking, you can think for yourself at least. But even though we see no proof of that specific conversation, I believe it, because we just read them text messages there where clearly Natalie didn't care about anyone else other than David in this scenario, and didn't care about Jeff's health. He's just had his eyeball nearly ripped out, for God's sake.
Didn't she say that you got on the crane because you had a crush on her and you wanted to impress her? Oh, yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
That's right.
Yeah, she said
What?
that in the documentary. And Casey's thing, like, I saw Casey's doc. Like, did you watch it?
Yeah, where the fuck is that documentary, right? Casey Neistat made a documentary on David Dobrik. I think it's called, like, Under the Influence, I think, creative title. And I think it was shown at some, like, film festival to see if it would get picked up by anyone. But maybe it didn't, I guess, because it hasn't released to the best of my knowledge. But I would love to see it. And apparently in this documentary, Natalie said that the only reason Jeff got on the crane was because he had a crush on Natalie. A very narcissistic take, I've got to say, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me again. The person that Natalie thinks is to blame here is Jeff Wittek, because he had a crush.
I'm cool with Casey. He tried as much as he could to make a real piece and tell the story truthfully.
Yeah.
And that's why David was like, oh, you made a hit piece on me. Like, motherfucker, you just told the truth, you know? They need a hit piece.
Oh,
like, he
that's
still
interesting.
sugarcoated it. Casey, like, made it as, like, sugarcoated as he could.
I wonder if that's got anything to do with it. So David's saying that Casey made, like, a hit piece on him. So I don't know if there's some, like, legal action there. Maybe the documentary is being used as evidence with Jeff's lawsuit. I don't know. I'm speculating at this point, right? But I would be interested to know why it hasn't been released. Is it just the case that it hasn't been picked up? Because surely he would just release it himself at that point, no? I obviously don't really know much about these, like, film festivals and movies getting picked up and that, so I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I would love to see it. And also another thing I found interesting here is I'm pretty sure, like, David, like, got into YouTube because of Casey Neistat, or he at least, like, looked up to him to a very high extent, because I think I remember when David was kind of growing, wasn't this, like, megastar yet, I guess. He made a video with Casey Neistat, and it seemed like he was kind of fanboying a little bit, so I always assumed that was kind of the reason David got into it, and that's who he kind of looked up to. So it's interesting that it's worked out like this.
Thank God he made that, because he's the one who told me. He's like, yo, Jeff, I need to show you this clip. Like, I know you're going about this as like, you know, he's your boy and you want to stick up for him, but, like, you know, this is how he feels about the situation. And he FaceTimed me, and I remember I was in Tampa at, like, the Jake Paul fight.
Wow.
He showed me the clip. He FaceTimed me, he shows me the clip, and he's like, so how do you feel about the girl? Like, and he was like, she just did it for, like, attention, you know? First of all, she's anonymous. She never even put her name in it.
Yeah,
And
what
then he's
the
like, how do you feel about the Jeff thing? And he's like, what? Yeah, Jeff's just crazy, you know? He's always want to do wild shit. And I was like, oh, that's how you feel, all right.
Well, and that's David saying that, I believe. I think he's talking about David here, or Natalie, but I'm pretty sure he's talking about David. And apparently in the documentary, he talks about the situation with a girl and Dom, which we covered a long time ago, and says that she did it for clout, even though she was anonymous. And then also mentions how Jeff is this, like, crazy guy, and he just wants to do, like, crazy stuff, and that's why the situation happened. It shouldn't really be shocking, but it's still, like, horrible hearing it, isn't it? But this is what David's like. This is what we learned over the past few years. This is exactly the type of stuff that you'd think David Dobrik would say. And yeah, man, I don't really know. I don't even know, what is David Dobrik even doing nowadays? So I'm just looking at some of the news articles here, and we've got, what happened to David Dobrik? YouTuber vanishes from the platform after major comeback. Oh yeah, he made a pizza shop. Fucking, I forgot about that. That can't be all he does now. What, has he just quit social media? I genuinely haven't seen his face for so long. That's kind of why I was shocked when I saw this podcast. I was like, fuck, I kind of forgot David Dobrik was a thing. And again, that's not me trying to use, like, an irrelevant joke, right? He's never heard of me in my life. I get that. But compared to where he was, you know what I mean? David Dobrik hints at possibility of reality show focused around this. Oh god, what the fuck is this about then? We've definitely thought about having a show around Dobrik's, which is his pizza shop. Sounds great. Almost like a reality show of employees at the restaurant, and, like, not in a crazy way where they're going partying every day, but just almost like a Selling Sunset meets a restaurant. Yeah, I mean, sounds awful, I can't lie. But yeah, either way, that's a bit of an update on David Dobrik and the Jeff Wittek situation and whatnot. I would love to know your thoughts on everything that we spoke about in today's video in the comment section down below, and I'm going to leave the video there. So if you did enjoy, please leave a like down below, subscribe if you are new, and until the next one, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, goodbye.